For the first time, human beings have created something which is potentially more intelligent and more effective than them in the longer term. We have Paleolithic brains, where we have godlike technology in front of us. We are like putting a jet engine on a horse cart. The more technological the world becomes, the more AI-driven the world becomes, the more human we need to be. And empathy, critical thinking, wisdom, ethics, culture, curiosity, creativity, these become way more important. Therefore, we need to now start developing our teams and our culture to be able to adapt to this new environment, not the technology.
There's a lot of manual labor, for lack of a better description, that can now be automated and roboticized. So what does that mean? Well, it means that I can spend more time inspiring people, guiding people, mentoring people, enabling people. So I have a lot more time as a leader because artificial intelligence is taking care of, let's say, that previously time-consuming activity. I can focus on human-centric leadership.
On the other hand, right, one of the fundamental challenges we see is the way that we serve citizens, and we want to change that. So the capability of being able to personalize at scale, at an individual level, is something that is very provoking, very intriguing. And that is where AI can thrive. Do I know what the impact is or not? Having humans in the middle across various elements, facets, industries, I think, and especially at the policymaking engine, enables us to understand better the impact of this change on society, on humans, and at the same time, how value is created, not just for a business, but for the industry. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Fearless Future. I'm Demetris Skourides, the Chief Scientist of the Republic of Cyprus for Research, Innovation, and Technology, and I'm delighted to be here in Dubai's Today episode, Strategy, Innovation, and Human-Centric Leadership in the Age of AI. We're living in a moment where AI is transforming industries, economies, and even societies at a pace we never have seen before. But with this transformation come critical questions. How do we lead responsibly? How do we balance innovation with ethics? And how do we ensure AI remains human-centered at its core? Joining me in the studio today are two extraordinary thinkers, Professor Steyn Heckroodt, Chief Thought Leader at the Platform of Connected Leadership and Senior Facilitator at Harvard Business Impact, who will be co-moderating the conversation with me. Thank you, Steyn.
Thank you.
And Tariq Qureishy, futurist, entrepreneur, and leading voice on AI ethics, Gen AI, and the opportunities AI brings for the future of work. Thank you, Tariq.
Pleasure.
Today, we'll explore strategy, leadership, ethics, and the opportunities shaping the future of AI, and what this all means for businesses, governments, and society at large. Before we move on, I think let's start with a round of introductions. So Steyn, over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. Really honored to be here, excited to be here. As you mentioned, I hold a professorship in strategy, but very much involved in leadership, and also strategy being something that looks at the future. A lot of my work today, of course, look at artificial intelligence. Other than being a chief thought leader for Platform for Connected Leadership, I've been with Harvard Business, used to be Harvard Business School Publishing, now Harvard Business Impact. I've been senior facilitator with them now for 8 years.
Thank you very much. Tariq, a few words about yourself.
Yes, indeed. My name is Tariq Qureishy. I am an entrepreneur, a futurist, a business strategist, I would say a transformation strategist. I'm also a Harvard Business School alum. And I have become recently an author, and I've done podcasting. I've done over 1,500 podcasts and 500 keynotes all over the world. And I moved away from the technology aspect of it, even though I understand the tech piece, into the humanity, into the ethics, into the trust. And I think today is a really important conversation in terms of those areas and how it actually integrates with AI and with data and our humanity. And I think we are at a seminal moment in our world. We're at an inflection point. And these are really, really important moments. And we need to capture these and share these thoughts with you and insights with you.
Thank you, Tariq. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Demetris Skourides. I act as the Chief Scientist of Research, Innovation, and Technology for the Republic of Cyprus, working very closely with the Deputy Minister of Digital Policy, Research, and Innovation, Dr. Nikodimos Damianou. And together we work on policy, we go beyond the formulation, But last but not least, we are racing against time to ensure that we future-proof Cyprus for the adoption of AI. Thank you for joining us. So I think, Steyn, let's start with, I think, the one of the big questions, right? So how disruptive is AI for businesses today? And are companies adequately prepared for adopting it?
Thank you very much. I think I want to start by saying that, disruption is not necessarily a function of innovation. Disruption, in my experience, is more a function of how fast or slow organizations and people in general are able to adopt to it. You look at something like emotional intelligence, which a lot of organizations refer to. Emotional intelligence sort of joined the world of work in 1992 after the work of Daniel Goldman. Prior to that, it was all IQ, it was all production, it was all widgets, it was all economies of scale, and it was just driving profitability. And it was all management. And then EQ was introduced in 1992. Following on that, we have the balanced scorecard, people starting to measure things like customer levels of satisfaction, internal staff development. The metrics shifted. For emotional intelligence to be effective in organizations, we had to go through transformation. So EQ also disrupted the world of management in the 1990s. But it only benefits the world of work if organizations are willing to adopt it. Any industrial revolution really is a massive disruptor. Unless, as an organization, you can adapt to that and then also work with it, then the disruption is not as bad. Unfortunately, as people, and I don't want to generalize too much, but a lot of people, and therefore also organizations, we tend to wait until we're drenched before we start to prepare for the storm. I don't know why that is. It's just a human phenomena. You take something like COVID happens, and all of a sudden to work from home is okay. To work from anywhere is okay. To do meetings online is okay. It's something that we could have actually implemented long before, but we hit a crisis, and then it's a disruption, and then all of a sudden we adapt. So because of that, that pattern of behavior that we have, I don't think that organizations are ready yet. I think that there's a lot to be done, both in terms of levels of levels of knowledge as well as levels of understanding. Until organizations break out of the idea that whenever there's a new industrial revolution or a new something that I can use just to increase profitability, I think the disruption is going to continue. And there I want to add early on to what Tariq mentioned during the introduction. It's about finding the synergy between artificial intelligence and human integrity, really. So are we ready? I think there's still a lot to be done.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So given that, organizations start always with strategies, right, and how they want to develop, and pursue, I think, their core objectives, what would you think are the critical elements that are missing in the current adoptions? Is it just knowledge? Is it just understanding? Or do you see other elements that are missing?
I really think look, primarily what we require is transformational leadership. Now, what is transformational leadership? I always use an example of Steve Jobs. I don't think people always understood exactly what he did with the iPhone, but what he essentially did is he broke away from a industry which was monitored by minutes, which had a limitation because there's only so many minutes in an hour, so many hours in a day, so many days in a week, and introduced the idea of selling data, which is limitless. That's true transformation of an industry. And if you had the opportunity to speak to the gentleman while he was still around, he would tell you that, the reason why they're doing what they're doing at Apple is because they constantly want to challenge the way in which things are done. It's not, maybe they did it through technology, but it was that thinking behind it. So I think true transformational leadership is critical in terms of AI adoption. I do think that there's work that's necessary to be done on level of knowledge and understanding. Of course, basic AI literacy, things like that needs to be understood. And I think probably the single biggest skill that's required is the ability to still take decisions. Organizations, again, whenever there's a disruption of sort, positive or negative, have a tendency of holding back. And we had it during COVID, waiting for the so-called normal to return before we can, take decisions again. True transformation in terms of AI is the ability of people to take decisions and kind of make decisions as we go along. Because, to wait for so-called normal, to wait for things to slow down, we're not in that world anymore. So I would say transformation leadership, very important, decision-making, very important. And then, of course, from the top down, some kind of a guidance or regulatory framework regarding that.
That brings me to the next one, right? So I think one way of looking at AI, right, and what it's doing right now could actually be described as, democratizing information, right, knowledge, and the way decisions are making. Now, talking about transformational leadership, right, there's, I think, a dilemma. One is innovation. One is the ethical dimension, right, in the long term. What's your view on the topic?
I think the way in which we need to address it is we need to find a role for both. Leadership has a specific role. Leadership is behavior. Artificial intelligence has a specific role. Yes, the two needs to integrate, but we shouldn't confuse the two. I recently had an opportunity to publish an article in MIT Technology Review on such a framework. It's called the AI and I framework, and the second I stands for integrity. And all I did there is I took leadership as a role, took AI as a role, and I said, okay, what are the key roles that we have to play as leaders to adopt artificial intelligence? We got to evolve, constant learning organization, that hasn't changed. Take decisions once again, with a large amount of empathy, as always, human-centric, people-focused decision-making. You have to interpret the noise to get to the level of decision-making, and for that, we require the ability to make sense. Now, if that's the 5 roles that I have for leadership, how does that correlate with artificial intelligence? Well, you take something like decision, for instance. Artificial intelligence is going to support me with options. You take something, leadership role like interpretation. Artificial intelligence is going to support me with various future scenarios. I have to evolve. Artificial intelligence is going to prompt what I need to learn. So I think if we define roles for both of these co-contributors to a new world, I think that's how you address in the longer term artificial intelligence and this integration with human integrity and ethics.
That's a very nice point, and I think that also builds on I think the requirement of really co-designing I think the work of the future. Thank you very much, Steyn.
Sure.
Now going over to Tariq. So Tariq, I mean, as a futurist, right? Yes. How do you see AI disrupting businesses, for example, in the Middle East, and what's the outlook that you see into the future?
AI is a fundamental new environment. For the first time, human beings have created something which is potentially more intelligent and more effective than them in the longer term. This has never happened in the history of humanity, so we need to be extremely vigilant, number one. Number two is that AI is not just another tool. I actually look at AI as a new algorithmic, new digital species. It's literally another human. Kids now look at their AI-driven toys just like they would look at a dog or a cat or a pet. And there are a lot of human elements that are actually coming in as far as AI is concerned. So that's one critical issue. The second is, Professor Steyn started with this, is that it's the speed. We have Paleolithic brains, but we have godlike technology in front of us. We think in linear form. Our whole brain is structured in a linear form. We think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But in the algorithmic and transformation world that we're living in, it's 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128. So within 7 years, you're at 128 times where you were when you started. We are like putting a jet engine on a horse cart. That is how we need to be looking at AI fundamentally changing things. I use a comment that change is now irrelevant. Change is historical. Change is too slow. Transformation is better. Reinvention is even better. And perhaps we need to, as corporations, start to look at reinventing ourselves. And the ideal is metamorphosis. A caterpillar can have a AI inside it or a ChatGPT inside it. It'll be fatter and smarter, but it still can't fly. To fly, you need to go through that metamorphosis. You need to go to that shift that happens and liquidize ourselves and come out as this beautiful, vibrant, blazing butterfly. And this is what businesses need to start looking at it. What I've noticed here is that it's a fad. Everybody is chasing the momentum. Everybody is chasing the this, the little bright lights. What we need to do with AI is to step back and take a breath. All of the companies that I have been involved with, I want to look at them and do some kind of health check and an audit and see exactly where they are on their data, exactly where they are on their people, exactly where they are on their processes before we even start talking about AI. We go bang straight into AI. It's like trying to give yourself an injection or supplements and so on, but you haven't even tested out where your body is. So a lot of companies are not quite ready to be able to absorb all of this power that they are receiving before they look at people, processes, and technologies that are going to integrate into their lives. And I think that's the big challenge right now. We've got a lot of new things happening, but we need to step back and say, okay, let's review, let's understand, let's look at it at an exponential level and find ways to reinvent and, if possible, go through a metamorphosis, because the same is not going to work anymore. It's over.
I like what you're saying, and I would actually build on that point that, one of the things that companies need to focus on, and leaders, is to really reimagine their business model, really look at,
Absolutely.
How does the business model change or need to change for us to basically be able to harness this great, I think, power, compute power, right, and scalability.
Yeah.
And it's really, as we say, AI has the potential to not only disrupt, right, the existing business model, but to also disrupt the industry itself. And I think we're seeing.
I think you're staying too narrow by just saying disrupt the industry or the business model. I think it just fundamentally changed the game. We are playing a new game. And I think that's how we need to be looking at it. We'll move from, football to rugby. It's a different game.
So let's stay there here for a second. So how should companies approach strategy building, right, in the age of this evolving era with AI?
One of the things that I obviously alluded to was to go through an audit and a health check. Start there. Don't just dive into strategy. Try and understand where you are as far as your company is concerned. That's the first thing. The second is that there are two elements which everything else in the world is depreciating, except data and talent and people. Assets depreciate, algorithms depreciate, every single asset out there is depreciating. But there are two appreciating assets. One is talent and people and culture, and second is data. So therefore, first thing we need to do is to look deep into those two aspects. How good is my data? What's the quality? What's the structure? How am I putting it together? That's number one. And number two, as far as people are concerned, are they ready to catch this ball? Are they ready to adapt? Are they ready for all of these things coming before we put in strategies? Because 80% of all strategies and use cases, to lesser or greater degree, are failing it right now. It's not because the technology is bad. It's because the culture and the people are not quite ready to catch that ball. So lifting people and looking at data, because these two things can drive that. And the third one is, I would say, build governance structures, build ethical structures, which will enable that strategy to be trusted by your consumers. Because there's a huge deficit of trust at this point in time in the world in almost everything that we do. We don't trust our governments, we don't trust our media, we don't trust our data, we don't trust companies. There is no trust. And a close brother and sister trust is truth and ethics. So if we don't have trust, truth, and ethics, AI, whatever we do with AI, is going to be a weapon of mass destruction. And I think when we are going into our strategies, we need to be able to sort of say, yeah, we have gone through a governance process, a review process, an ethical process, that these things that we are doing are the right things to do.
Thank you very much. So we often refer to data as the new oil and AI as energy, right? And we often see that AI has actually failed in many businesses. Many implementations have gone wrong. I think we've seen many case studies or papers from analysts. So do you think that AI is a myth?
No, AI is not a myth. AI is real. But let me go back to data is the new oil. I used to, subscribe to that. I've gone beyond that. If the price of oil is, let's say, $80, and that's your data, well, then with oil, you can synthesize it, cleanse it, enhance it, add components to it, and you create jet fuel. Jet fuel is over $1,000. So you have a 17 times increase, 17x increase. So data is jet fuel. because you can harmonize it, you can anonymize it, productize it, tokenize it, fractionalize it, and create an environments and products where data can take you 17x more. So data is not oil, it's jet fuel. So that's the new way of looking at data, because then your whole mindset shifts. Okay, and then you say, okay, how can I use this? And we have various use cases which we can discuss later, where we can go into companies and come out finding $1 billion, $500 million worth of unutilized costs and enhancing revenues by just using data better. And this is the 10x, the 17x increase. And I think that's part of what we should be looking at and thinking about, is how we can use, and then the other one is culture and training, because we, you, me, all we're in the same sort of generation. We came up learning maths and physics and science and technology. But the more technological the world becomes, the more AI-driven the world becomes, the more human we need to be. And empathy, critical thinking, wisdom, ethics, culture, curiosity, creativity, these become way more important. Therefore, we need to now start developing our teams and our culture to be able to adapt to this new environment, not the technology. The technology will always be there, but the humanity part and the learning part and the development part. And I think that's very close to a lot of the work that you do.
I think, if I may, to build on what Tariq has been saying, maybe if we could look at this on a national level as well, Demetris, if you could maybe share with us, looking at Cyprus, how is Cyprus, adopting AI?
Thank you very much, Steyn. From a national perspective, we started in 2020 with a national AI strategy that laid the foundations. We're currently at the stage where we are building the next bridge, 2025 to 2030. The government, the Council of Ministers, has actually built a national AI task force with a very different way of approaching how we bring AI into the government, right? Instead of really looking at it from a purely strategic perspective, right? What we have done is built a task force that brings in foresight leaders, people with experience, visionaries, researchers, people from the industry and law, to actually look at how do we create value, how do we capture value across public sector and private. And the reason we did that is because as we have seen across many businesses, startups that are really ramping up and then failing, many people can actually create the value, but they can't capture it, right? And when you look at public sector is all about creating social impact, serving citizens. It's a very different game when you actually are going to use a technology, AI, right? Many people actually mistake that generative AI is only AI to serve a citizen. But in reality, right, you then get lost into the specifics. Like, do we really look at creating productivity benefits, or do we really focus on the customer? So what we are doing at the National Task Force, we have actually split up into different types of working groups, where we have a working group that is really looking at the future of workplace and AI. And as part of what you said, the key here is continuous learning and development, because what we're seeing is that this technology is moving very fast, and it's really unfolding in ways that we're really going to be creating, I think, productivity benefits, quality of life improvement, be it healthcare, be it in other areas.
May I comment on this one? Sure. It's quite interesting what you just said. Companies and countries both want to boil the ocean and do everything together. And I think it'd be interesting to see what your perspective is in terms of trying to do everything together. Because my perspective is that we should narrow the problem and then narrow it further, and then really, really build small slices and build on that. Because what narrow AI does at this point in time is to help to build that. Because where I go is, you go into a big bank or a big corporation and say, well, we need a new AI strategy and completely change the whole thing. That is a disaster. And countries are also doing that.
It is, you're right. So what we are doing at a national level is, as I said, we have different working groups working on different areas. One is looking at the infrastructure, one is looking at the skills, right, and the talent and the development tools required. One is looking at what use cases and what industries within the industry itself, in private sector and then in public sector, we're looking at. We don't want to boil the ocean, because we've seen that those other nations that have preceded us and have gone on very ambitious journeys with adoption of AI have actually, been challenged. What we are looking at is identifying top 3 use cases and solution areas that are going to add, short-term value and mid-term value, opening up opportunities in the public sector. It means approaching basically where the work is really creating an inefficiency or a bottleneck. 90% of public servants are challenged with bureaucracy, with a lot of admin work that keeps them behind from really being able to really focus the time on, value added items like, decision insight, or, looking at how things are moving and being able to bring, suggestions. On the other hand, right, one of the fundamental challenges we see is the way that we serve citizens, and we want to change that. So the capability of being able to personalize at scale at an individual level is something that is very provoking, very intriguing. And that is where AI can thrive. Now, building on this, the solution isn't just changing from one day to another. The solution is really building slowly those platforms that are going to get there. Hence, our strategy is multi-prone. It's actually being designed in ways where we will be able to really touch the levers of the economy. Now, Cyprus, as you may know, is an island, less than 900,000 people, right? And ICT right now is rapidly increasing in terms of our capability. It represents 13 to 14% of the GDP, growing at 17% right over annum. So this economy until recently was supported by a very, very strong arm of professional services. So helping educate, right? How does AI enable lawyers?
Yeah.
How does AI enable, for example, accountants? How does AI enable, education? Are things that we're predominantly...
Lawyers and accountants are going to be out of business very soon. So, so are we enabling them, or are we actually eliminating them, or marginalizing them?
I don't think they are going to be out of business. I think that, the role is actually going to be empowered, and it's going to get a bit wider. But what I'm trying to say here is that for each industry, for each group, there is a transition period by where we will see some of the boundaries of the work to be done changing. Yeah. And these are the elements where we are actually right now busy thinking about is how do we set in motion those policies? How do we basically design agility into the system to be able to cater for this change?
So, Demetris, just in the interest of time, we need to move on. So, just hold your question. I still want to hear if you had to elevate what it is that you're doing in Cyprus onto the international, on an international scale. Any strategic imperatives that you can advise in terms of AI adoption on the global scale?
Yeah, for sure. So I've been hearing people talk about human-centric AI and humans in the center. So what we are really looking at right now, and this is an initiative piloted at my office, the Office of the Chief Scientist, is leveraging multi-agent systems and agentic AI in ways that we basically enable technocrats, scientific officers to basically have a tool that will help them to deal through this complexity much faster. We are looking at creating a 40% productivity benefit from them in favor of society. Remember that when you are at the government level, you have working, for example, with other countries, other boards, scientific committees, requires a lot of knowledge, a lot of procedural understanding, guidelines and regulations. All of these take time. When you leverage a technology that on one side empowers every public servant to be able to be more productive, more in depth, this unleashes productivity. We're piloting. This is something that is really showcasing tremendous results in my office, and this is something eventually that once we can actually prove it a bit wider at a ministerial level, I think we will be in good position to actually share.
Great. Well, thank you very much. We can maybe move on to the human-centric leadership. Next one.
So human-centric leadership in the era of AI. So Steyn, I'm curious, right? How is AI reshaping leadership and strategy?
Okay, I'm going to answer by splitting the two. Okay, so let me talk about AI specifically in relation to leadership. I think the first thing that I notice is, and I mentioned this earlier, just in briefly referencing to the published framework. Leadership is about taking decisions. It's the one key responsibility that you cannot get away from. Whether uncertain times, stable time, you have to, as a leader, you have to take a decision. And it's not about, right or wrong, good or bad or appropriate. You just have to take a decision. And I think what is required a lot of times, why decision making sometimes is slowed down, is they can't make sense of the noise. Be that disruption, be it something as horrific as COVID, be it a new trend, be it an explosion of social media, canceling culture, whatever. The rules are changing. I like the fact that Tariq said, we should effectively reinvent, change the game, come up with a whole new game. It's making sense of the noise. The minute that you can interpret, make sense of the noise, it enables you to take a decision. So I think the first thing in terms of AI and leadership, it's kind of a decision-making augmentation that I think hugely impacts. The second thing is, again, the human-centered leadership. Human centricity, the way in which I've experienced it and researched it, is almost a byproduct of the disruption of artificial intelligence, where companies are saying, whoa, I can, routine tasks can be automated. So there's a lot of sort of, manual labor, for lack of a better description, that can now be automated and roboticized. So what does that mean? Well, it means that I can spend more time inspiring people, guiding people, mentoring people, enabling people. So I have a lot more time as a leader because artificial intelligence is taking care of, let's say, that previously time-consuming activity. I can focus on human-centric leadership. And then the third one really is ethics and trust. Tariq alluded to it. And when I looked at the question and in terms of preparing the answer, I was kind of saying to myself, well, should ethics and trust not really be the first one? Why is it the third one? So by no means are these in orders of priority. It just happens to be put together like that. Very, very significant research that we did during COVID, and we measured the importance of physical proximity for building trust. And what we determined, back to the cultural differences that Tariq referred to, is that in some parts of the world, when people do business, the average distance between the two parties are 2 feet. And in some parts of the world, that average distance is 6 feet. The way in which they greet one another is different. Trust is built in some parts of the world through a contract. In other parts of the world, it's built through personal experiences, getting to know people, social events. So even, when we talk trust, where that trust lies and how it's established is different in different nations. So I think ethics and trust, once again, it's about the ethical use of AI. What does that mean? Is it the same? It's definitely not a one size fits all. So I think that's the three impacts artificial intelligence on leadership itself, is that augmentation in terms of decision making, the human centricity, and then trust and ethics. In terms of strategy, a little bit simpler in my experience. The first one is from linear to adaptive. Tariq referred to that. To evolve strategy from linear to adaptive is not all that new. We've been doing it for decades. It's just the pace and intensity, once again, is much faster. We work with 4 levels of uncertainty when we develop future scenarios for organization in the world of strategy. One, simple future, fairly stable. I need one strategy, like a train track running through a desert, very simple. Second one, contingent plans. Plan A, plan B is what we call it. A little bit more uncertainty, more disruption. Third one, alternative futures, where I start to build on various levels, diversification, products, services. The fourth one, interestingly enough, is where I work with emergent strategies. There I don't even see beyond next month. It's very short term. It gets changed on a daily basis. AI allows us to actually enable that and do that. Second one, personalization, market positioning. AI gives us information. I don't have to go broad-based anymore as an organization. Previously, if you look at the models of globalization in the 1990s, it was as much of the same product as possible to as many people as possible. We can now go into micro-segmentation.
Exactly.
And then the last one, just operational efficiency. AI is still, look, you take commercial evolution. We went from conventional models, bricks and mortar, walking into a store, platform economy in the 1990s. Yeah, I could go online, but I still needed a credit card, and I had to have Wi-Fi connectivity. Today we have a social commerce. Everything is about experience. People don't deal with companies anymore. They deal with apps, and they have a very, very short patience span in terms of the app having to work. So I think optimization still, you can use a strategy for that. And in the final instance, to use it as a strategic differentiator. Bring AI in for higher levels and faster levels of innovation.
So building on that, right, because that's a very interesting point. What leadership qualities are essential, do you believe, for responsible AI adoption when you're thinking about adopting AI at scale?
Look, I'm gonna have to push back to ethical stewardship. I think it's going to be the biggest point of debate. I remember when I was at an AI conference yonks ago when it was almost still fairly new in terms of being spoken about it, and it's going to change the world and all the noises that came with that. And there was a gentleman, he was a keynote that defined artificial intelligence as the imitation of human behavior and intellect. And I only had one question, that was which human? Just as I explained just now, in terms of ethics, how we establish trust, are all different. So I think ethical stewardship, very important in terms of key leadership qualities, a strategic foresight, the ability to make sense, once again, with AI tools, human-centered mindset, definitely, I spoke about that as well. And then in the final instance, look, let's not ignore AI literacy. What is AI literacy? A lot of people think that because they can chat the prompt into ChatGPT that they are AI literate. Not at all. I think that's a key component, more on a knowledge level, but it has to be addressed. And the fifth one in terms of quality is governance and accountability. You as a business leader, you're now responsible for something like AI ethics or the ethical use of AI. It's a brand new topic in the boardroom. So those are the five I would highlight.
Thank you very much. Now, moving on to Tariq. Many tech companies advocate for the rapid adoption of AI, right? We want to adopt it. We want now. We don't want to miss on the train, right? Given regulatory differences between regions, what role should strategy play in enabling these frameworks, in your opinion?
Strategy is always an important component, but I think we perhaps are seeing it from the wrong perspective. Perhaps we need to look at it from a customer experience perspective. I'll give you an example. A couple of days ago, I got a driving license renewed. How long do you think it took me? I went to the Customer Happiness Center here at the Road Transport Authority. How long do you think it took me? Steyn, you live here.
I'm not going to say, because I've had that experience. I have an unfair advantage.
Okay. 90 seconds. That is the total amount of time that it took me to get a driving license. Now, why does that work? One of the reasons is behind the driving license is the ID structure, and everything is automated. The data structure is completely aligned and sorted out. And utilizing AI and the use cases, they are delivering specific customer happiness to deliver a driving license to you in less than 2 minutes. And I think we need to start looking at strategy from that perspective, from a user experience perspective. So companies shall remain nameless, but one of the big consulting firms, they flip their business model rather than delivering strategy documents and so on. And they acquired a company that does consumer design work and so on, and said, what does it look like at the end? So for me, that end piece was getting a driving license or sending money or something like that. Once they have verified what the customer is looking for, then you build back the strategy from there rather than the other way around, because we're smart enough to build strategy, but we're not that good in understanding human experience and customer experience.
Yeah, on that, if the models of change in terms of commercial models, we did a longitudinal study, runs over the past 50 years, and it's literally a shift from profit-centric, inside-out thinking in organizations to what you're talking about, customer-centric, outside-in. Really starting with a kind of immersive experience with the customer, and then sort of reverse engineering it back into organizational structure.
Yeah, building on this is very important, just for given that the audience is listening to us, to actually understand that there is a different type of a speed that governs how you embrace technology serving a customer that is changing on a daily basis. At the public sector level, right? We do have a completely different paradigm, because the customer is the end citizen. Talking with, I think, the Chief AI Officer of the Department of Economy and Tourism here, what I realized is that the UAE government had actually started as early as 2010, building, for example, these blocks on the data right? For them to be able to normalize the data and start, bringing it, cleansing it in, moving on top of that, right? To eventually what I think happened in 2017 with them appointing the first AI minister, and now, right, having to see across each ministry an AI officer or a chief AI officer, which brings me back to a key finding here is that what we usually see, that doesn't work well is companies underestimate the amount of, let's say, components, platforms, infrastructures for it to go. So it starts with the data. You build data scientists on top. You build AI engineers. You build use cases, right? But at a national level, for you to empower and to say that I want to empower and make a country where I want to have citizens happy and measure citizens' happiness, that's a strategic direction.
Yes, there's one thing that Professor Steyn said, and that was augmentation, and for leaders to have that. To me, the whole philosophy is human plus AI. The number of times that I go out there and I'm as a speaker and I'm asked, will AI replace human beings? And it's a rhetorical question for the audience also. And the general answer is no, AI will not replace human beings. But there are two qualifiers. Qualifier number one, humans plus AI will replace the human beings who are not using AI for at least 80% of the things that we do out there. So we have to, AI is now like reading and writing. We have to find a way to get into it. So that's the first issue. The second is that even though you may learn how to use AI, in your job, 80% of jobs, 70 to 80% of jobs by 2030 do not exist today. So therefore, all of these jobs are changing and they're reforming and redesigning and shifting and amending. So we need different set of skills and different sets of abilities to be able to address these humanities. So that is how we need to start learning and rebuilding back into the game.
I think to summarize, what I found is that leadership and strategy are converging around the idea of humans and machines together outperform any one of them alone. So humans and machines together will outperform any one of them alone. I think that's
I was
summarizing.
There's a product called Aiden from Microsoft, which is at the International Holding Corporation in Abu Dhabi, where it's the first robot, AI bot, sitting inside a board. So the chairman and the CEO have the bot working for you right beside you. And I think that kind of digital twin will be there with you, Minister, with you, Professor. As we go forward, within the next 5 years, we will have those digital twins. So I think we need to start reinventing ourselves and starting to become comfortable to have a twin in our lives. And that will be that digital species that I speak about to enhance ourselves. And the last one is, I don't think our leadership, 50 plus, are that tuned to make decisions with reference to AI. You need the 25-year-old. You need I mean, I have a study from MIT, and I know you're an alum from there, where they were looking at 95% of Gen AI projects and use cases are failing at this point in time. The ones that are succeeding are kids who are doing between the ages of 19 to 23. The Gen AI projects that are succeeding are those run by startups, by young people. Because the older ones we just don't get it, because for us it's just a new language.
A little bit mechanistically entrapped. But I want to go back to Cyprus, Demetris, if I can. Cyprus ranks highly on both the European and global innovation scoreboards. And talking about AI, I mean, what steps are being taken to ensure responsible AI adoption?
Well, at the European level, we have the EU AI Act, which is I think an initiative and a direction of travel to really embrace AI. However, embrace it in a step change format where we do understand and measure the impact it has with the dangers that come, with it. Part of it is basically to ensure that for every use case across areas, either these are mission critical, highly sensitive areas or not, to make sure that we take steps proactively to govern, right? We have a governance framework. We go into really looking at, is the data, right, biased or not? Do we actually have transparency across, the algorithms that have been trained, etc.? This is actually a very important part because, as you know, right, the EU isn't one country. It's a series of countries together, working together, and building and embracing this way of working ensures that we can create a blueprint, a test bed for solutions to be able to really be compatible, operating across countries. Now, for us, right, that also will require notifying bodies that are, there and responsible to ensure that AI solutions that are coming in are meeting the standards. We also need to really plan ahead for that amount of infrastructure requirements required for us to be able to operate it. So there is a lot of work being done. There is an AI office, and Council of Ministers are meeting on a regular basis, working into taking this forward.
I think if I may just maybe jump to the question that I have for you under AI ethics and responsible innovation. Tariq and I have alluded a lot to AI leadership, the ethical component, the trust component. But just to build on what you've mentioned now, I mean, I would love to hear whether you could maybe just from your perspective also elaborate on the importance of human in the center, this whole human centricity notion that comes along with AI. Is it not just something that we're putting out there because we don't want to scare people off? Is it real? I mean, your view on that.
It is real, right? And let's be very honest. We live in a world where we're using solutions by technology hyperscalers that have been trained, and until now, right, most of us are really using these models and adding training on top of that using RAG. Well, some of these and many of these tools and models have never been trained with the complexities and the peculiarities of a nation, right? The same thing goes for, I think, the health ecosystem, right? So not having a human in the center who will actually use this information, review the data sets that are used, ensure that we are really looking at the impact, right? And also the quality improvement of a model. Placing a product, right, like AI, which is a self-learning engine, right, without really being able to really know, am I really passing a bill, right, that actually gives ultimate power to machine to make decisions? Do I know what the impact is or not? Having humans in the middle across various elements, facets, industries, I think, and especially at the policymaking engine, enables us to understand better the impact of these change on society, on humans, and at the same time, how value is created, not just for a business, but for the industry itself. Remember, AI is a very disruptive technology.
Yeah. A quick story on this to validate what you're just saying is that behind the Google search engine, and now Gemini, there are about 20 to 30,000 humans sitting there making sense of the searches that are coming in. And if you remove those, even with Google's admission, in a couple of months, the engine will be worthless. So that general view of making sense, having sense of mindfulness, having a sense of balance, having a sense of judgment and wisdom, and these are normal generalist people who are sitting behind the Google engine. That's the human in the loop. ChatGPT has around 10,000 people doing exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
So humans are still quite relevant, and I think that's something which is really important to see.
So, Professor Steyn, where do you see the greatest ethical risks in adopting AI today?
There's 5 things that I've considered under this question. The first is bias and discrimination. We can, unfortunately, AI can reinforce unfair social practices, biases that already exist, because again, it goes back to the comment I made right in the beginning, who's human, which human are we going to choose for this? So I think that is something that needs to be looked at. The other thing is lack of transparency. You get so-called black box ways of, providing information. How do I fact check it? How do I know where it comes from? So I think transparency is something. Privacy violations, it's a big thing. It will always be, it has been for over a decade now with the explosion of social media, the Facebooks and everything that went with that. I think excessive data collection. Yes, we're excited because we can, sort of micro categorize and segmentize, but there's also that part that we need to be aware of in terms of privacy violations. Misinformation. Generative AI fuels, unfortunately, deepfakes up to a large scale. We've seen it. We see it in social media. We see it in certain political races. You really just don't know whether it's the truth anymore or not. And then I think accountability gaps. There's unclear responsibility when AI harms or, something goes wrong because of AI. So there's accountability gaps there. So I would say, bias and discrimination, lack of transparency, privacy violations, misinformation, and accountability gaps.
Building on this, I'm very curious. How can businesses and governments ensure that AI serves humanity rather than undermine it?
Well, I think, up to some point, I'm going to give you a chance just now, Tariq. I think up to some point, a robust governance and regulation is required. The book is out on the content, what needs to be in the content, but clear laws, standards, and internal oversight, it's got to be there. I would like to see us build ethics into the design. Artificial intelligence is already there. What is the biggest conversation we have today about artificial intelligence is what is the impact on ethics? What is the impact on value-driven decision-making? It should have been there right from the start. To now kind of bring it into the design is going to be complex, but I think it's needed. Third thing is to ensure transparency and accountability. I mentioned that before, the leader now is responsible for using AI ethically. And what does that mean? The human-centered approach, not going to talk about that again. I think we've said enough around that. And then in the final instance, yes, we spoke a lot about differences, human differences. I do think that now is the time where we have to foster some kind of a global collaboration, because which human being? Whose ethical framework? Whose understanding of respect, trust, those kind of things. So I think we need to align on international standards and public-private partnerships to give that content life.
Thank you very much. So Tariq, over to you. You've been here in the Middle East, and you're actually giving a lot of keynotes across the globe. How has the Middle East approached AI first and humanity first, right, in terms of adoption?
They have been leaders in this, and since it's a young environment, it's a new environment, it's actually something that they can get onto very, very quickly. UAE is a classic example, and now outside the US and some other countries, they are genuinely taking a lead as far as AI is concerned, and all the big data centers and stuff like that. But going back to what Professor Steyn said, I think the time has come where we have to stop and press Alt, Control, Delete on all of the institutions of the world today, like the United Nations, IMF, World Bank, all of them, because they were created 80 years ago for problems 80 years ago. Today's problems with data, with AI, with ethics, with all of these things are not reflecting today's things. So the countries here are actually, and I sit on several committees in the UAE also, talking about this. How do we build those guardrails? And the biggest problem I see is that the incentives are wrong, because the only incentive is for governments is fine, but for private enterprises is for shareholder value. And as long as that is the driving incentive, we will not have any kind of real ethics, because whenever it comes to sort of ethical, but it's making us 10 times more money, then we'll certainly do that. Take drones, for example. The number one app for drones is killer drones as weapons. Now, ethically, it's wrong, but it makes a lot of money for a lot of countries. And even in the European Union, which is brilliant and the furthest ahead as far as AI regulation and governance is concerned, AI regulation in the European Union does not apply to military activities. It only applies to the private activities. So this is a huge area. So we need to literally press that Alt, Control, Delete button and start doing. So your question, how are these countries doing? I think extremely well, because they're starting fresh, clean sheet of paper. It's a small nation, and they can start building on that. And I think the future is really bright for countries like UAE, Qatar, Oman, to some extent. Saudi Arabia is slightly different. They have a larger population, so therefore they have real issues, and they have to address them differently. But I think keep your eye on this part of the world, because you'll see a lot of good things and new things happening here.
Thank you very much. So as we're approaching the end, if there were one or two takeaways you'd like the audience to take, what would they be, Steyn?
I think, having traveled to more than 50 countries in my lifetime, working with hundreds of different clients, nationalities, I have a passion for cultural competence, the ability to decide to learn from different cultures as opposed to acting from a position of superiority. I had the opportunity to co-author an article with a very young student, talking about the younger generation, early 20s, Nolwazi in South Africa from my old university, Stellenbosch Business School. And she also came up with a model. And one of the things that she mentioned is this idea of embedded societal values. So for me, the key takeaway is I think we need to, based on that article and based on her views, we need to co-design. It's the first thing. And we need to co-design with cultural nuance. Because I think what needs to be avoided here is that some superpower, some organization or country comes out with a kind of a one-size-fits-all way in which this adaptation needs to take place. I think, if anything, this is maybe one of those pinnacle moments in the history of planet Earth, where as humans, we can pull together again.
Thank you very much. Tariq, your view? Any takeaways you'd like the audience to take?
The couple of takeaways. One of them is that the AI rocket has been launched. And now what we have to do is to find a utopian future or a dystopian future. And that choice is something which is very, very much in our hands. And I think this is one of the key things. The second is a phrase that I use, and that is care versus caring. As far as AI is concerned, we need to take a lot of care in terms of cybersecurity, ethics, etc., and so on. But also there has to be caring. And that caring part is that AI will disrupt jobs. AI will shift a lot of things because the top 80% will do fine, but the bottom 20%, 1 billion, 2 billion people are going to be struggling. So what we need to do is to have a lens to look at the social aspect of this and to be caring with AI, not just looking at the profit piece as far as AI is concerned. And lastly, but not the least, is there is a lot of AI anxiety out there. And I've created an acronym called FOBO, which is fear of becoming obsolete. And anybody who's north of 50 at the moment is struggling with FOBO. And I get asked all the time, Tariq, please help me to become future ready, because I'm 50, I've got another 20 years to work. I have these young, smart people running around me. I have no idea how to cope with that. And what do I need to do? And here's a study, and I will end with that. This is an MIT study which talks about AI anxiety, and that's the hidden cost of rapid change. And it says 82% of the people increase in those saying they are feeling overwhelmed by AI. 82% are feeling overwhelmed. I mean, there's 51% say that that learning AI feels like creating another new job. 33% are saying they're embarrassed about how little they know. So there is a lot of anxiety there that needs to be addressed. And that is how we can become future fit, future ready, and hopefully future proof.
Thank you very much. And as we conclude, what I will say is we've seen that many organizations, many, I think, nations, many companies, right, fail simply because they underestimate the complexity of bringing AI within their family, their DNA, right? When we talk about strategy, it's looking at the long-term perspective and treating AI as a strategic weapon, as a strategic, let's say, tool and an asset. Bringing us to the second area is that the amount of change that is required for us to harness this technology and bring it to the masses, to our citizens, to our fellow employees, co-workers, students, right, requires continuous learning and development. Focus on where you can actually create value and capture value. And as we said, right, moving towards thinking as to how can we future-proof, I think policies, future-proof organizations, future-proof our knowledge base, future-proof the platform that we are, and that, building on some of the points raised by my fellow speakers, requires for us to really co-design, think about how do we expand, how we define the new boundaries, right, as to how do companies, how do experiences look into the future. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.